Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP, after serving 4 years in Afghanistan and recovering from surgery, discovered his girlfriend had been cheating on him with his best friend. He confronted her, ended the relationship, and cut off all ties with him. Despite their attempts to reconcile, the community sided with him, and his ex is now shunned and embarrassed. Now let's get into the story. I, 22 male, had been with my girlfriend, 22 female, since high school. In school, we shared a group of friends, one of those friends being a kid named Tyler. He was my best friend, and if anyone saw me in high school, Tyler was usually within 5 feet. After we graduated, I was extremely disappointed that my girlfriend moved with her family out of state, but we continued our relationship as a long-distance one. Since she moved away, I was only more encouraged to enlist in the Army, just as my grandfather, father, and older brothers did before me. I served 4 years in Afghanistan. Right at the end of the 4-year mark, I noticed a lump in my testicles. I had surgery on them to remove whatever it was. It turned out to be benign, so not only did I have that to be thankful for, but I was also back in my hometown with my own place to live. Sure, I was recovering from surgery with a diaper on, but I was happy. My girlfriend made the long journey to help take care of me and potentially move in. During all this time, I kept in touch with Tyler, but he told me he couldn't make the trip to come see me and didn't know when he'd be able to. On the first night, my girlfriend gave me a little heartache, and I had to wait for my girlfriend was in my home. She cleaned up for me and offered to cook us something for dinner. She asked me to look up a recipe for chicken cordon bleu, but my phone was unexpectedly dead and wouldn't charge. She seemed a little hesitant to hand me hers, asking me more than once if I was sure my phone wouldn't turn on. She pointed off as if she was just disappointed. I didn't have a phone anymore and finally handed me hers. In the midst of looking up a recipe, a text message from Tyler came up across the top of the screen. He asked if he suspected anything. My heart rate picked up and my balls started to hurt. I clicked on the message and it felt like my stomach jumped into my throat. My girlfriend had been texting him on the entire drive to my house, talking about how she was great at keeping secrets and playing it cool. Tyler was extremely anxious that I was going to find out about them. They'd been having intimate while I was deployed, even referring to it as a Six Nation. I wasn't sure how long they'd been going at it, but it had apparently happened quite a bit. I saw every part of Tyler I never wanted to see, and he had photos of everything my girlfriend pretended to be so modest about. Pictures were sent between them on my birthday, even. One of the pictures was the same one my girlfriend sent me. That was also at least one day I had talked to both of them on a video call. I never suspected them of anything, and they never even told me they talked to each other. I was under the impression they lost contact after high school. Suddenly my world was crashing down, and I was hungry and helpless. My girlfriend asked me if I found anything good, and all I said was, yeah, and showed her the texts. Her jaw dropped, and she turned red. She grabbed her phone from me and swore that they never actually had intimate, claiming it was all fantasy talk, and they were only worried about me finding out they'd been sending pictures and having video calls. I told her I wasn't a moron, and I wasn't about to believe her lies. I told her to leave me and never come back. She was shocked. She tried to ask me how I was going to recover alone. But I told her I'd be better off figuring it out myself than with a backstabbing piece of trash. She withdrew into herself, gathered her things, and left. At that moment, I was proud of myself for kicking her out, wearing a diaper and all. I didn't have a phone, so I survived in my home until I was well enough to go out, replace my phone, and order some chicken cordon bleu. Thankfully, the Army made it easy for me to survive and be comfortable living alone. I waited until I was ready before I jumped back in the dating pool. I hadn't been single since high school, but in a way, I was alone the entire time. I never truly had a girlfriend or best friend. Tyler reached out to me just an hour after my ex left my house, but I never responded to him. He proved he wasn't a friend at all. Everyone in my hometown knew of us, and eventually found out what my high school sweetheart did to me as I served in Afghanistan and recovered from surgery. Each time she tries to come back and visit, no one wants to see or talk to her. She brings Tyler along, which makes it worse. He knows they aren't welcome there anymore, and the last time they visited I heard they were arguing in public. My ex's parents have since moved back here, so she's extremely embarrassed and just wants to move on but can't. Not after betraying me like she did. I'm regarded as a war hero, neighbor, and friend around here, and I think justice has been served. Today's second story. In this story, OP proposes to his stunning fiancée but soon notices her increasing distance. After discovering her cheating through hidden cameras, he devised a plan to end their relationship. Following their breakup, he unexpectedly bonded with his ex-fiancée's mother, leading to a passionate affair. Now let's get into the story. I thought I had met the perfect woman. We met in the last year of college at a party and hit it off instantly. She was a beautiful blonde with sun-kissed skin, and she could have been a model, reminiscent of a Kate Upton type. She was kind, compassionate, sympathetic, a good listener, and had an active life with many friends. She liked my friends, and it was awesome to see how our friend groups merged over the 3 years we knew each other. Several of our friends began dating each other. It was some of the best times of my life. I was aiming for a postgraduate degree in finance, and she had a degree in contractual law. This is just to say we ended up being successful in our own rights. But I'm no slouch in the looks department either. I'm 5'11", 190 pounds, and I like the gym. I wasn't a super athlete, but let's just say I was built. However, I was and am very shy and didn't have many prior relationships before meeting her. The first evening we met, we were smitten. The first night, we talked all night. Then it progressed to texting and phone calls daily, then weekly dates, and after a year when I started my new job, she moved in. I loved her family, and her family loved me, mostly her mother, as her father was standoffish, as he was with everyone. It was a whirlwind romance. After 2.5 blissful years of overseas vacations, hiking trips, and luxury vacations, I proposed to her. She said yes. I was over the moon. She took on all the planning for the wedding. We talked about our futures together, buying a house, children, and family trips that we would take together. Then it happened. One evening, after we both got home to our apartment, she was a little distant. I think I noticed it right away, as we were always very affectionate towards each other. This happened about once a week for the first month after the proposal, then it became more frequent. I would have been none the wiser, except that I used to listen to music, into a lot of Reddit on YouTube, so I waited and observed. These bouts of ignoring me would only last a couple of hours, then she would be right back to normal. But after 6 months, with the wedding in a year, she was like this almost every night. The intimacy was still great. My relationship with her parents was still great, but over Thanksgiving at her parents' home in Louisville, Kentucky, we lived just north of DC. She was standoffish towards me in front of her mother. Now her mother was a very observant woman. She pulled her daughter aside to talk, and I could hear them arguing. After some heated but muffled words, they returned to the rest of the family and carried on as if nothing was wrong. I figured I could ask her about it later and did so. She was unwilling to talk about it and asked me to wait until we were home to discuss it. I agreed as I loved her deeply and thought we could work through anything. Her mother was an older version of her, possessing the same stunning looks, just with a few grays in her long, thick blonde hair. This detail is important later. Back home, I asked her about the Thanksgiving conversation, and she was unwilling to discuss it. When pressed for a week, she finally confessed that a guy at her work was trying to get to know her better. Wanting to be forthcoming, she showed me her phone. As I looked through it, I noticed that all the texts that would have occurred during the time she was withdrawing from me were removed. There was nothing untoward in the remaining texts. However, I went into her phone settings and turned on her locator, as we shared the same phone plan, and I honestly thought it would reassure me that she was not doing anything wrong. Was I wrong? The second weekend after Thanksgiving, she had a company Christmas party. I had planned on going, but came down with food poisoning and had to back out. She had a girlfriend pick her up from our apartment as they planned on drinking a lot and had a designated driver for the evening. We had planned for her to be out all night, so I told her to have a blast and I would see her in the morning. So as I was puking my guts out and barely able to get off the toilet for more than 30 minutes, I grabbed my phone and watched her location. First, it was a restaurant, then the venue of the company party, then a bar. None of this alarmed me until I saw her phone stop at a downtown hotel. At this point, I was miserable in more ways than 3, projectile vomiting out of my butt, mouth, and now soul. I finally fell asleep due to sheer exhaustion at 2 a.m. At 7 a.m., I awoke and saw she was still at the hotel. At noon, she finally came home and I was on the mend. She was affectionate, and I asked her about the previous night without mentioning anything about knowing her location. She talked about the restaurant party and the bar, but then said she went to her girlfriend's house to crash for the evening. The first lie. For the next 3 months, she started working later and later, but she didn't know what 3 to 4 days a week. As I began asking her about it, she became more and more defensive. I talked to her mom one evening when my fiance didn't come home until late. I asked her mom about the Thanksgiving conversation, and she admitted that she suspected her daughter might be stepping out of our relationship based on her body language. She also mentioned that her daughter had been more distant with her in their weekly texting conversations. With all this speculation in my mind, I kept it to myself. 2 weeks later, I got a new project at my company that required me to fly to the Midwest Monday through Friday for the next 5 weeks, starting in 2 weeks. It came with an increase in salary, and as I broke the news to my fiancée, she seemed delighted. However, I suspected that her excitement was for different reasons. So I went online and ordered 4 motion-activated spy cameras for my apartment. I placed one in the living room/entry area, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one looking down our hallway. They were very small and connected to the internet via a hidden network, so they couldn't be spotted on the Wi-Fi network. I secured the cameras with a password and waited. During my first week away, she had girlfriends over for the first 2 nights and never worked late once. On the 3rd night, a guy came over, and I was enraged. I sat in my hotel room, screaming at the monitor and calling her every name in the book. Then they went all the way, first on the couch, then in our bed. She bent in ways for him that I didn't know were possible. What was the worst part was that as I was watching them get intimate, I called her to see how her day went. She heard her phone ringing and held her hand up for him to stop, interrupting their activity, and answered the call. I asked why she was breathing heavily, and she said she was at the gym working out. As soon as the call was over, she went right back to what they were doing. When I got home on Friday evening, I ignored her and went straight to bed. Early on Saturday, I got up and went cycling. I was so upset that I didn't even realize I had biked over 50 miles from our apartment. The furthest I had biked before was 30 miles. But that day, I went 105.6 miles. When I got back, absolutely exhausted, I showered. Then she and I went out that evening and had fun with our friends and had a love to drink. Is it breakup intimate when the one you're going to break up with is oblivious? I was bursting inside with heartbreak, anger, rage, and feelings of betrayal all swirling around in my heart and mind. She who used to be so attentive was oblivious to all of this. It hurt so much because I loved her so much. I finally confided in one of our mutual friends, and he told me that they all knew about it for months. Finally, I was told they all felt sorry for me, but no one again said a damn thing to me. That's why they stopped inviting us out with them. I hadn't known what they were doing. I missed it before, but I could look back and see that about 3 months prior, they gradually invited us to mean less and less. So I figured I would try to win her back. The next weekend, I planned the entire weekend as a complete indulgence for her in every way. We wined and dined, pampered ourselves with massages, and talked about future plans and how much I loved her. I knew I was starting to break through when, after her 4th glass of wine, she started to cry, and I could tell the guilt was surfacing. I asked her what was wrong, but she choked up every time she tried to speak. I then told her that if she had something in her past, or was having some kind of conflict in her mind that she needed to discuss with me. I was more than willing to listen, and if forgiveness was needed, I was more than willing to forgive and move on. The only words that came out of her mouth were about how much she loved me. It actually hurt to hear that from her, as I now had 4 separate videos of her and the other guy in our apartment engaging in intimate activities. Over the next 8 weeks of traveling to the Midwest, the trips lasted for what would be 10 weeks. I recorded over 41 hours of her having a relationship with what I found out was her coworker. She never worked late once while I was gone. I tried every weekend to be extra attentive, and each week she grew more and more distant. After observing this for 8 weeks, I was done. So I devised a 12-step getaway plan. Gather evidence. Get her out of the way to execute my plan. I scheduled a 2-week exclusive getaway trip for us at an all-inclusive resort in Barbados. She was ecstatic. Then, a week before the trip, I claimed I had to back out and told her to take a friend. I knew it was over when she showed no disappointment that I couldn't go. She scheduled a coworker to go with her. Terminate our apartment lease. It would expire 3 days into her trip, and I was the sole signature on the lease. Find a job in another town. The company I had been assisting in the Midwest had offered me a job with a slight increase in salary. Find a new place to live. I got an apartment in the aforementioned location. When she is gone, perform the following. Take her to the airport, go back home, and pack all her things same day. Saturday, get a new phone number, phone, and email. Cancel all social media. Separate us completely in regard to finances. Withdraw all money from our joint accounts and then close to them. I put all her money in an envelope and packed it in her things. Have the movers pack all my things up and ship them west. Take all her things to her mother's house 600 miles away. All my fiancé's belongings fit into the back and bed of my F-250 crew cab. Give her mother the evidence. Start my new life. I didn't want to do anything that was illegal, so I made sure that nothing of hers was missing. It was so hard to pack all her stuff nice and neatly away. I had never cried so hard in my life. I have read so many times on Reddit about significant others saying they will never do it again when caught, but they don't stop. My hope was that she would genuinely confess so we could forgive and move on. She never did. Twice she came really close, but her secret was too hard for her to reveal. Tuesday morning, I left our apartment north of DC for the last time. It took 10 hours to get to her mom's house. What happened when I got there? I was not prepared for it. I arrived at her mom's house around 8 in the evening. I figured she would be surprised to see me since I was coming down unannounced. Since they lived in a gated community, I had to buzz her house from the front gate, so she was waiting for me outside when I drove up. I could tell that she had been crying when I walked up to see her. I asked her what was wrong, and she hugged me, bawling that she thought her husband was cheating on her with a much younger, skinnier, and prettier woman. Dumbfounded, I just held her for what was probably 10 minutes. She soaked my right shoulder with her tears and snot. When she finally composed herself, I asked if we could have a conversation. We went inside, and I inquired about her husband's whereabouts. She indicated that he had claimed to be going fishing with his friends at a remote cabin an hour away. Then she added, he dislikes fishing. She provided me with all the signs she had noticed, and apparently, this had been going on for about a year. So, after doing some research, we found a credit card charge for a stay at a 5-star hotel that was only 20 minutes away. A phone call later confirmed that her husband was indeed there for a 4-night stay with his mistress. 2 peas in a pod, I said. What? She responded. 2 peas in a pod. I repeated. Your husband is cheating on you, and your daughter is being unfaithful to me. That's why I came here to drop off her belongings and move somewhere else. I showed her the evidence in a binder containing screen captures I had collected. After examining the first few pages, she looked at me in disbelief. We both hugged and cried for a good 30 minutes. At that point, she told me to stop crying and looked at me, saying, well, tonight, there's nothing we can do about it except for you and me to have a few glasses of Mosquito and spend time in every room of the house. She grabbed 2 wine glasses and a bottle of Mosquito, wine heading out to their private pool deck, asking, are you coming out here, or are you going to seek revenge? I won't go into much detail, but that night and for the next 3 days, we spent intimate time together non-stop. I explored every aspect of her beautiful body. I must have made love to her over 25 times during that period. After those days were over, we said a passionate goodbye, and I drove to my new destination. She kept me informed about everything that happened when my now ex-fiancé returned. The day my fiancé got back was quite dramatic. I had canceled my phone the morning of the day she returned, so when her plane landed and she called for a ride, it indicated that the phone was disconnected. Apparently, she had her lover take her home. He dropped her off and left. When she reached the door, a strange couple, the new tenants, answered it and she freaked out. I can't tell you how many times she tried to call me because, again, the number was no longer valid. She wanted to stay with her girlfriends for a while since her coworker was already married. When she called her mom in a panic, her mom told her that I had come down and dropped off all her belongings and mentioned that all her money was down there as well, 600 miles away. Her mom didn't tell her about our relationship, but did inform her that she knew she was being unfaithful to me. I had found a new job, a place to stay, and a new career far away from her, and her mother was separating from her father due to infidelity. Apparently, she cried for days and took a week off from work. However, she eventually found comfort in the arms of her married lover. Her mom never revealed my whereabouts to her. I had completely cut off that part of my life. The only connection I had to my past was through my ex-fiancé's mom, and she has kept our secret to this day. Here is a little bit of what happened afterward. As for the timing of the events that allowed me to leave her, a lot of it was extremely fortunate timing. The lease ending, the successful job search, and the phone plan ending. Things could have unfolded much differently if any of those factors had been different. My ex-fiancé's mother, EFM, stayed in touch with me for several months afterward, as we both experienced the loss of our relationships and shared a form of revenge against our significant others. However, neither of our respective significant others found out about what happened between EFM and me. EFM eventually visited me after 7 months in my new location, but much to the disappointment of many of you, we only talked. We both actually regretted what we had done together but acknowledged that it was in the past and in the heat of the moment, days of heat and moments. She mentioned that her daughter knew that she, EFM, knew my whereabouts and was very upset that she wouldn't reveal my location. EFM asked if she could tell my ex-fiancé where I was and provide a way for her to contact me, but I requested that she not tell her as I had moved on to my new life. EFM and I had extensive discussions about the possibility of her and her significant other staying together and working things out. EFM shared that her husband was extremely remorseful and came clean about everything. She said it was a lot to take in and had asked him what he was going to do to earn back her trust. He gave her all his digital passwords and allowed her access to everything he had ever done to harm their marriage. EFM ended up being very angry but recognized that he was genuinely trying to repair the marriage. EFM mentioned that her forgiveness would come with time, but trust would take longer. What caused him to snap back into reality was when she confronted him about the affair and showed him evidence of what his daughter had done to me. EFM was an amazing woman in every way imaginable. She also stated that if he strayed outside the marriage, she would be allowed to do so as well. He picked up on the again phrase and asked her what she meant. She told him that as soon as she found out he was cheating, she had relations with the first eligible man she found. He was devastated. EFM said they cried a lot and agreed to separate for a short time to give each other space, to articulate their thoughts and determine if they both wanted to fight for the marriage. Ultimately, they attended marriage counseling, and as of May 2020 were still together. As for my ex-fiancée, she was devastated by what I had done to her when she finally went to her parents to gather her belongings. She was presented with evidence of the affair and was deeply embarrassed. EFM had edited the binder so that when her father saw it, he would not see inappropriate pictures of his daughter. Regardless, my ex-fiancée was crushed. She didn't find out that her mother had my contact information until months later. She begged her mother for my information, which strained their relationship. However, her mother also told her that if she attempted to find and contact me, all the evidence would be released on the internet by me. This insistence on my ex-fiance's part prompted her to come and see me. She was also upset about her parents having difficulties in their marriage. According to EFM, my ex-fiancé was depressed for several months and sought counseling. She immediately ended the affair with her coworker. Once she returned from her parents' place in Louisville, she began looking for a new job. Recently, I found out that she got married and has 2 beautiful twin daughters with a good man. She still lives in the DC area and works for home, enjoying her new life. According to EFM, I'm glad that she was able to turn her life around and find happiness. I recently destroyed all the incriminating evidence I had concerning my ex-fiancée, as I didn't want to be the person who would hold her hostage for the rest of her life. I asked EFM to convey this to my ex-fiancée. If I had been on the receiving end of that information, it would have caused me many sleepless nights. As for myself, let's just say I am calm and content with my current life. EFM and I initially talked every few months, but now we communicate once or twice a year, usually with brief updates on life's minor changes. The only unanswered question for me is whether if EFM and her husband were able to repair their marriage. My ex-fiancé says, and I could have done the same, but I never gave it a chance. One can only speculate. Our lives have taken us on vastly different paths now,